a part of a novel. Okay, when we read Little Women, we read the part from Little Women when being neighborly. Remember that? That was part of a longer story, even when we read the story of the last one, The Call of the Soil. That was also part of another part of a book, right? Now, Little Women, if you remember, was totally fictional. It was a story, it was a fiction, while Call of the Soil was not fictional. It was this Mr. Iyer's own story, right? And so it was, in a way, autobiographical. He was telling his own story of how he shifted from the city to the village, right? Moong to microchips to Moong, or whatever the hell it was, microchips to Moong. Yeah. So it was kind of biographical, while Little Women was fictional. It was a novel, it was a story, something that does not really happen. Correct? Now, the one we're doing today is not a part of a big book. It is not a part of a novel. It is fictional. It is a story that has not happened, but it is a short story, which means this chapter encompasses the whole story from beginning to end. All right? So we should be able to understand it very easily. There are no references to other people who we do not understand. Like in Call of the Soil, somebody asked me, who is this Baban? It was not explained, right? But his name kept appearing. So his name was obviously been explained earlier in the book, but since we were just doing an extract of the book, we sometimes didn't know who all the characters were. But in this, you'll see it's a short story. It begins and it has a definite ending, and all the characters we see, we will recognize, we will be told exactly who they are. Okay, something interesting in the short story, which we often find in short stories, it is called a twist in the tale. The tail, not the T-A-I-L, though that also, the tail is at the end, the T-A-I-L is at the end. And here you will see in this tale, T-A-L-E. T-A-L-E is also another word for a story. Britishers often use the word T-A-L-E for a story. So this is a twist in the tale. It is a surprise ending. Something that you are not expecting from the story comes up at the end of the story. Okay? So you will see that as we read through the story, and also the mentee will see that very, very clearly, because it's not the ending that he or she is going to be expecting. Okay, so here we have a short story, an English novelist and a poet. She's also obviously writing short stories, and she writes about the England and in her time. All right, so here we say her novels were set in the borderlands of Sussex and Kent. So in India, like we have states, they don't have states in England, they have counties. Okay, C-O-U-N-T-Y, county, one county, and T-I-E-S, more than one county. They have counties and they have districts. All right, they don't have states. And Sussex, Kent, Oxfordshire, Shropshire, these are all counties. Durham, these are all counties. And here we are at the border of the counties of Sussex and Kent. It says clearly in the introduction. Okay, so just to know what Sussex and Kent are. Okay, so county, if you have any cricket enthusiasts, if your mentee is a cricket enthusiast, he or she will definitely know about county cricket, because the county cricket clubs in England are huge, and our Indian players go play in county cricket in the UK. So that's a word that they may be familiar with. Okay, so since Hava is absconding, I think, maybe Rakshita and I will read. So Rakshita, since I'm on, I'll just start reading, please. In East Sussex, a great tongue of land runs into Kent. What is a tongue of land? It is like an elongated piece of land. Okay, sometimes the elongated piece of land goes into the sea also. It's like a tongue, long and narrow. Okay, so this piece of land land which is going from Sussex into Kent, but it's actually Sussex. It's part of Sussex, the county of Sussex, right? So in northeast Sussex, a great tongue of land runs into Kent. It is a land of woods, the old hammer woods of the Sussex iron industry, and among the woods gleamed the hammer ponds. Now, hammer, woods, and hammer ponds, okay? They just mean woods and they just mean ponds. But hammer woods and hammer ponds is obviously some typical local name that they give it. And why is it called hammer? Because the iron industry was very big in these parts, and timber, that means wood from the forest and water, wood from the forest and water were used a lot in the iron industry. Iron, hammer, used a lot in the industry. Okay, so the water from the ponds used in the iron industry, so-called hammer ponds, wood from the woods, so-called hammer woods. Owing to the thickness of the woods, the road that passes Mrs. Addis's cottage is dark long before the fields beyond. That night, there was no twilight and no moon, only a few pricks of fire in the black sky above the trees. Okay, so the road leading to Mrs. Addis's house is extremely dark. There is no moon, there is no light, only little pricks of fire, only little bits, little like pinpoints of fire in the sky above. But what the darkness hid, the silence revealed. In the absolute stillness of the night, windless and clear, every sound was distinct and intensified. In the night when there's pin drop silence, even a car going by your building on the street, the sound, you get the sound very loudly, right? Not because a car is louder, but because there is no other noise around. So every tiny bit of noise that is created is amplified. It is intensified. It is louder than it appears to be louder than it actually is, right? So in the absolute stillness of the night. Yeah.
Ma'am, could you please explain hammer woods and hammer ponds again? Sorry, I was cut in between.
Yeah, can I just finish this and go back, please? In the absolute stillness of the night, yeah, windless and clear. There's no wind also. So there's no sound of the wind. There is just no noise and there is no light, right? Every sound was distinct and intensified. The distant bark of a dog at Delmondon, Delmondon is a village close by, sounded close at hand. So a barking dog in the next village appeared to be close at hand. This is a phrase you need to please make a note of. You're going to have to explain this to your mentees. What do you mean by close at hand? Nearby. Right? What's happened? Why am I echoing? God no. It is close at hand. It is nearby. And the man who walked on the road could hear the echo of his own footsteps. It's so quiet that he can actually hear the echo of his own footsteps following him like a knell. The echo of his own footsteps are like following him, coming from the back like a knell. What is a knell? Knell is the ringing of a bell, but not for a good reason. It is a very grim or sad ringing because it's usually a death knell, the sound of the bell when somebody dies. So when you hear the ringing of a bell at a sad time, you call it a death knell. So knell signifies, it is ringing, but the significance, let's say if you go into a slightly deeper explanation, it would always be for an unhappy reason, not for a happy reason. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to you, Satyam, but having said that, this is a superb description of the atmosphere. She's setting the atmosphere. She's setting the tone of the story. She's setting the scene. She's painting the picture of the scene only using words. Okay? She's really skillful. If you think about it, if you reread it, you can almost form a picture in your mind of where Mrs. Addis's cottage is and the atmosphere around it. To go back to Hammer Woods and Hammer Ponds, the explanation, the meaning is just woods and ponds. Woods means forest, right? But around this area, there was this iron industry, iron, A-I-R-O-N, right? And to process iron at that time, they needed wood, timber, wood, and they needed water. Okay, so obviously the woods or the timber which they got were from these forests, so they call them hammer forests, and the water were from the ponds around here, so they call them hammer ponds. Nothing to get stressed about. Even if the mentees don't get it, it's not going to bother them. Just look at the picture that the author has painted in the first chapter of the surroundings, and that's the most important part. Rakshita, would you like to continue, please?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible clearly? Good.
Yes.
Thank you. Every now and then, he made an effort to go more quietly. But the roadside was a mass of thorns, and their cracking and rustling were nearly as loud as the thud of his feet on the road. Besides, they made him go slowly, and he had no time for that. So you can clearly see he's debating which part. So you have the road, and then you have the sidewalk, right? The part where there is no road, you can people mostly walk around that area. But he's not able to decide because the amount of sound that his feet makes on the road is the same amount of sound that the cracking of the thorns, basically those small thorny plants that are there in the corner, they make the same amount of noise, and those thorns make him go slower. So what do we understand from this? There are two things he needs to do. He needs to go faster, and he needs to go really quietly. Ma'am, shall I continue with the next paragraph as well?
Okay, sure.
When he came to Mrs. Addis's cottage, he paused a moment. Only a small patch of grass lay between it and the road. He looked in at the lighted, uncurtained window. He could see Mrs. Addis stooping over the fire, taking some pot or kettle off it. He hesitated and seemed to wonder. He was a big, heavy, working man, not simple, judging by the way he sat. For a moment, he made as if he would open the window. Then he changed his mind and went to the door instead. So, this is the first time that we get the description of the man that we have been reading about, the one who's been walking. And the description you see is very interesting. He's a heavy man. Okay, that's a physical description. He's a working man. Okay, means he's big and he does work in the farms or the iron factory. This is nearby. He's not successful, judging by the poverty of his appearance. Okay, so she's judging whether he's successful or not, our author, by how he's dressed. And it's interesting to note that he is standing outside the house thinking he might just go in by the window, which is a strange thing to do. If I want to go visit a friend, I wouldn't stand and think whether I should just go in by the window or should I go for the door.
All right. Can we change the page, please?
Yes, ma'am.
He did not knock, but walked straight in. The woman at the fire turned quickly around. What, you, Peter Crouch? She said. I didn't hear you knock. I didn't knock, ma'am. I didn't want anybody to hear. How's that? I'm in trouble. His hands were shaking a little. What have you done? I shot a man, Mrs. Addis. You? Yes, I shot him. You killed him. I don't know. For a moment, there was silence in the small, stuffy kitchen. Then the kettle boiled over and Mrs. Addis mechanically put it at the side of the fire. I think that's easy to understand. She mechanically put it at the side of the fire. The kettle is on the fire. You all know what a kettle is. It's boiling over mechanically without thinking. She's used to kitchen work. She's been slogging all her life. She picked it up and put it on the side. Now, she was a small, thin woman with a brown, hard face on which the skin had dried in innumerable small hair-like wrinkles. She was probably not more than 42, but life treats some women hard in the agricultural districts of Sussex, and Mrs. Addis's life had been harder than most. Okay, so here's a description of her. We've already got a description of the guy. Now we even know his name, Peter Crouch, right? And here is the description of Mrs. Addis. The wrinkles, hair like tiny, tiny lines on her face. But life treats some women hard in the agricultural districts. What do you mean that life treats some women hard? Anyone wants to speak? Come on, guys, what does it tell us about Mrs. Addis?
Ma'am, may I please?
Yeah, of course. Please don't ask permission.
Probably she has faced more challenges than others and overcome those challenges much more than others.
Sure. So maybe she's faced a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. She's also clearly not a very rich lady. So she's worked hard her whole life, right? She's probably worked outside the house. She's managed her house. So she's worked very hard. She's not had any luxuries or comforts, all right? So all these things tend to age a person earlier than a person who's had a cushy, luxurious life for sure, right? So she's had a hard life. So now we have a pretty good description of Mrs. Addis. Rakshita, please.
What do you want me to do for you, Peter Crouch? She said, a little sourly. Sourly means a little bit of bitterness, like she doesn't like him that much. Let me stay here a bit. Is there nowhere you can put me till they've gone? Who's they? The keepers. Oh, you've had a quarrel with the keepers, have you? Yes, I was down by Cinderwood. Cinderwood is, so cinder is a type of wood. So Cinderwood is probably a plantation nearby. Seeing if I could pick up something, and the keepers found me. They were 4-1, so I used my gun. Then I ran for it. They're after me. They can't far off now. Spurs are basically, when you have a huge land of agriculture or, trees and stuff like plantation, you basically keep people to ensure that people like Peter Crouch don't steal anything from your property. So these keepers basically, and in states like Sussex, it's very often that people come and take small pieces, like how children steal mangoes in India from people's trees. Yeah, this is sort of the translation of that. So when the keepers came, he actually took out his gun, and of course we know that he shot somebody. So he shot somebody, one of the keepers, with his gun, and now they are after him.
Okay, so while Rakshita turns the page, yes, this is correct. And she's absolutely right on about the keepers, people having last swaths of land. And they did steal the agricultural produce, but there would be some wild, see, this is a while ago, right? There would be small animals on the farm, like on the land, wild animals on the land, like rabbits, like deer, right? So people would also come to shoot these animals for food, because there were a lot of poor people, right? So this is called poaching. This is called poaching. The illegal killing of animals is called poaching. Now today it's illegal to kill wild animals because they are endangered and because we need to preserve them. Hunting is illegal. This is for a different reason, because they're endangered. But back in this time, the lord of that castle, manor, or whatever forest had the rights over his own land. So he had the rights on the water of that land. He had the rights on the animals of that land. He had the rights on the forest of that land. So anyone who came into his land and took away wood or shot animals or took away any agricultural produce, as Rakshita said, that man was a poacher. And so the Lord kept keepers to mind his land like guards, to mind that nobody came and took away anything. So clearly Peter Crouch was on somebody else's land trying to get an animal or whatever it is he was getting, and keepers saw him and accosted him and he got frightened. Okay, all right.
Excuse me, ma'am.
The last sentence, right? Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The last sentence is pending.
Yeah. So Mrs. Addis did not speak for a moment. Crouch looked at her beseechingly. To beseech somebody, to beg somebody. Someone looks at you beseechingly. Please give me something, whatever the hell it is. Okay. So that's called beseechingly, to beg someone. So he's looking at Mrs. Crouch beseechingly and then giving her a reason. You might do it for Tom's sake, he said. You might do what? Give me refuge, help me, keep me here, keep me safe. You might do it for Tom's sake, he said. You haven't been an overgood friend to Tom, snapped Mrs. Addis. But Tom's been a very good friend to me. He would want you to stand by me tonight. Well, I won't say he wouldn't, for Tom always thought better of you than you deserve. Thought better of you than you deserved. What is Mrs. Addis's opinion of Peter Crouch? Obviously. Come, tell me. What is Mrs. Addis's opinion of Peter Crouch?
Maybe he's an influence or something, because she said you haven't been a over good friend.
What kind of influence, Pratiksha, good or bad?
A bad one.
Yes. She doesn't have a high opinion of Peter Crouch, correct? And she says that her son has been a good friend to Peter Crouch more than Peter Crouch deserves. All right. So clearly she is not happy with the way Peter Crouch conducts his life. And so she says that he has got better from Tom than he deserves. So, well, I won't say he wouldn't, for Tom always thought better of you than he deserved. Maybe you can stay till he comes home tonight. Then we can hear what he says about you. He'll be up at work for an hour yet, and the coast will be clear by then. I can get away out of the country, right? So obviously Tom is at work. He's going to be at work for 1 more hour, and then the coast will be clear. Again, for your mentees, what is the meaning of coast will be clear? The danger will have passed. These people will have gone ahead. It will be clear. He will be free to leave, right? So he presumes that within an hour, by the time Tom comes home, he can leave. All right. So he's actually just trying to pacify Mrs. Addis. He's trying to get some time, right? He's almost begging her to, giving her reasons to protect him till he can escape. Where you go? Asked Mrs. Addis. I don't know. There is time to think about that. Well, you can think of it in here, she said dryly, opening a door which led from the kitchen into a small shed at the back of the cottage. They'll never guess you're here, especially if I tell them I haven't seen you tonight. Okay, so clearly, again, what is the reputation of Mrs. Addis? If she tells the keepers that she hasn't seen Peter Crouch, they will believe her. What kind of woman is Mrs. Addis? Come on, guys.
Trustworthy and honest?
Yes, that's the opinion that people have of her, right? So if she says, I haven't seen Peter Crouch, presumably they're just going to walk on and not look inside her house, right? Okay, Rakshita? Rakshita, can you hear me?
You're a good woman, Mrs. Addis. Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
was maybe I mother like Tom.
Oh Lord.
So he's also buttering her, like
Sorry, Rakshita, we can't hear you clearly. I'm just going to read for a short while, please.
okay.
You're a good woman, Mrs. Addis. I know I'm not worth your standing by me, but maybe I'd have been different if I'd a mother like Tom's. Okay? I know I'm not worth your standing by me. Right? Clearly, he hasn't led a very honest or honorable life. Perhaps he doesn't work. Perhaps he's not very steady. So he says that I'm not worth your standing by me. You're helping me. You're helping me in my time of trouble. To help someone in their time of trouble is to stand by them, right? We know that. So please explain that to your mentees that I'm not worth your standing by me, but maybe I'd have been different if I had a mother like Tom. So perhaps he's trying to praise her. Perhaps he's also reflecting on perhaps he's had some kind of troubled childhood. Perhaps he hasn't had the best of upbringing. Perhaps he's had no parents. We have no idea of that. But clearly he hasn't had a great past. Okay. Rakshita, are you getting signals?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Let's
Yes,
go.
ma'am. Am
Yeah,
I
yeah.
audible now? She did not speak, but shut the door, and he was in darkness, save for a small ray of light that came through one of the cracks. By this time, he could see her moving to and fro, preparing Tom's supper. In another hour, Tom would be home from Iron Latch farm, where he worked every day. Peter Crouch trusted Tom to help him, for they had been friends when they went together to the national school at Lamberhurst. And since then, the friendship had not been broken by their very different characters and careers. Well, different characters tells us that probably Tom is a upright citizen. He is not somebody who would shoot anyone, and well, that's it for this paragraph. I think it has all the easy words. Peter Crouch huddled down, which is basically he made a ball sort of a figure because of course he was hiding. He did not want to be seen by the people who were following him. Upon the sacks that filled one corner of the shed, a delicious smell of the cooking began to come through from the kitchen, and he hoped Mrs. Addis would not deny him a share of the supper when Tom came home, for he was very hungry if he had and he had a long way to go. He had fallen into a kind of helpless doze. Helpless doze is basically you sleeping, and helpless because he was so scared. He did not have anything to do. He was in the dark. So, sort of fell asleep because he did not have anything to do and he had to stay still. When he was roused by the sound of footsteps on the road. Shall I continue, ma'am, with the fourth page?
Shall we? It's going quite well. Let's finish one more page.
Okay.
For a moment, his poor heart nearly choked him with its beating. They were the keepers. They had guessed where he was, with Mrs. Addis, his old friend's mother. He had been a fool to come to the cottage. Nearly losing his self-control, he shrank into the corner, shivering, half sobbing. But the footsteps went by. The next minute, Mrs. Addis stuck her head into the shed. That was the keepers, she said shortly. I saw them go by. They had lanterns. Maybe it would be better if you slipped out now and went towards Cancitron. Please, guys, don't get worried about the names of the places. These are all places around, okay, whether it's that Ironwoods farm or it's Conciron or it's whatever that Del Monde or whatever was in the first page. These are just places around, okay? So nothing to explain or nothing to get worried about. Okay, so they went towards, what is it, Canciron. You'd miss them that way and get over to Kent. So you see, Kent is the next county. So she's trying to tell him that you can run away to Kent. There's a London train that comes from Tunbridge Wells at 10 tonight. So what he's trying to tell him is that there's a train from London coming in at 10 tonight. You could board that train and you could leave. Tunbridge Wells is a place in London. That's all. Again, nothing to be confused about. So a train will come in and you could get in and you could run off. That'd be a fine thing for me, ma'am, but I haven't the price of the ticket on me. The price of the ticket. He hasn't the price of the ticket. Look at his English, all right? So different from the way we speak. We would say we haven't got enough money for the ticket, right? He hasn't the price of the ticket. Went to one of the kitchen drawers. Here's 7 shillings. That'll be your fare to London and a bit over, a bit over, a bit extra. 7 shillings. This is many years ago when in England they used pounds, shilling, and pence. Okay? This was the old system of their currency. Today they don't have shillings, they have pounds and they have pence. Okay? 100 pence make a pound, exactly like 100 paisa make a rupee. Very easy. Now everybody's in the metric system. But this was not the metric system. All right? It was pounds, shilling, and pence. So she gave him 7 shillings and said that that will cover your fare to London and that will also give you a little money left over. Okay? For a moment, he did not speak. Then he said, I don't know how to thank you, ma'am. Oh, you needn't thank me. I am doing it for Tom. I hope you won't get into trouble because of this. There isn't much fear. No one's ever likely to know you've been in this cottage. That's why I'd sooner you went before Tom came back, for maybe he'd bring a friend with him and that'd make trouble. The sooner you leave, the sooner you left, the faster you leave, it's better for you because the keepers have now gone. The train is coming to London. She's given him the money. And of course, she also wants to get rid of him. He's not a favorite person, but this is a great way for him to escape, right? All right. He opened the door for him, but on the threshold, they both stood still, for again footsteps could be heard approaching, this time from the far south. She stood at the threshold. When you open your door, right in the doorway is your threshold where you enter or where you leave. It's called the threshold, all right? Absolutely at the point where you enter or you leave. And again, they could hear footsteps. And this is where we're going to stop because after that, we have the twist in the tale, which we will read at one go the next time. Okay, because no point in ruining it halfway. Okay, and Rakshita is going to take the questions just for the amount that we have read. The questions have already been sent to you on the group, guys. So if you want to look, Rakshita, do you want to put the first page on when you give the first question so that they can read? Because I think it's a little unfair that they don't have the text with them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Lovely.
So the first question is, in the I'm so sorry. In the paragraph, the author creates an atmosphere of in the first paragraph, the author creates an atmosphere of suspense. List the words that supplement her in doing so. I have intentionally used this sort of a language, words like supplement, because a lot of times such words do appear in the question paper. Supplement is basically helping the author create the atmosphere. So, the first paragraph, it really creates this sort of, it makes you wonder where they are and it's dark and, you don't know where he's going and he's trying to walk softly, right? So we just have to list out the words that help her, create such an atmosphere. Who would like to go first?
May I go?
Yeah, please.
Rakshita, may I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Dark, long. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Black sky, no twilight, no moon, dark, long, pricks of fire, black sky, windless and clear, distinct, intensified. Thank you.
Perfect. The second question is describe Mrs. Addis's physical appearance. State the phrase in which the chapter tells us that she has had a difficult life. I think yes. So here's our paragraph. Who would like to bring out the appearance of Mrs. Addis, please?
May I?
Yeah, please.
Yes, so it said that she is thin and she was brown in color and she had a hard face. Also, it was she had a wrinkled face, and the phrase which tells that she had a difficult life is that, but life treats some women hard.
Perfect.
Great. Great. Just as if I may just come in for a second, if you're giving an explanation of what has been said in the paragraph or in the story, that's great, as Ankita did. Ankita, right? But when we actually use the words, like when Madhura was saying pricks of fire, or when you're actually picking out words, then please put them in inverted commas or quotes, right? Because we are actually using the words of the author or the poet at that point in time. They are not our words, all right? So then we use it. Like in Ankita's answer, the first part she said in her own words, which is excellent, which I much prefer. And then just the last part she said about that sentence about, women are hard in the agricultural districts of Sussex. So that you would put in inverted. Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, please.
What has Peter Crouch done? What reason does he give Mrs. Addis for doing it? It's a very simple question. Somebody would like to pick it?
May I go ahead?
Yes, please, Satyam.
So he shot a man, and the reason which he gave to Mrs. Addis was that that they were troubling him, and he wanted to protect himself.
Perfect. I think that's a good enough answer. Also, what you could add to it is that he says that there were 4 people and he was one. So he thought it was right for him to shoot and drag. Thank you, Satyam. Do you feel Peter is a criminal? If yes, do you think Mrs. Addis is correct in supporting him? I would like a lot of people to answer this and preferably contrasting views if you want to.
We actually don't know the story to know whose side we are on, because he may be right, or for his safety reasons he did something, but we don't know actually.
May I try, please?
Yes, please. It's a discussion. Everybody give your point.
Okay.
Great answer, Pratiksha. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I think Peter is a criminal, given that he shot a person, which is never accounted for. But I think Mrs. Addis is also correct in helping him. Even though it's maybe legally wrong, but in a moral or ethical sense, it is a correct thing to do to help a friend, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Somebody else?
Anybody else contrasting views?
I think it's wrong, and I think Mrs. Addis should not support him. Even like the fact that he shot someone is not acceptable. Something like that.
Great. Come on, keep it moving. We've got a lot of time.
Anybody else would like to add something to the answers that have been given?
Would you like to examine the circumstances under which he was in the forest in the first place? Does that, in any case? Yes, please, Ashika.
Probably we can say that he shot him in the dark, since it was too dark and he could not see anything. He by mistakenly shot Tom. Can we say that?
We don't know that he shot Tom or not right now. He shot a person, right? He shot somebody. He himself is not right clear who he shot, right? He says, I probably killed him also. But what's your judgment of his behavior? That's what we're asking him.
I guess like Crouch is a criminal because, or else he wouldn't have been so, you know, he wouldn't fear so much if the keepers would caught him or not. He should not fear if he is not a criminal. And also he gives Mrs. Addis so many reasons to keep him in the house, protect him. So I guess only a criminal would do that. So I guess he is.
I think like the first place, why was he carrying a gun with him? So
Yes, sir.
that could be questionable. So that way.
So perhaps in that time, I mean, we didn't have gun laws, and it was perfectly okay for people who lived in rural areas to have guns because hunting was legal, and hunting was animals were a source of food, particularly for the poor. So perhaps the gun was okay, but was it okay for him to be where he was?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes.
So I think he is a criminal irrespective because he shot someone. So irrespective of his reason for shooting them, he is a criminal. Now based on the reason, his punishment can be less severe, but he is a criminal. And secondly, if Mrs. Addis was correct on supporting him, I don't think so because in a way she is encouraging something which is wrong. She's supporting it, so indirectly contributing to something which as a society it's you wouldn't want to live in a society where people just shoot someone, and so you're indirectly contributing to something which is morally wrong, and even legally it will not be a good place to live in if that's the kind of behavior which is tolerated. Hence, she shouldn't have supported him. That's my opinion.
Also, the reason with which Mrs. Addis is supporting him, it's not the reason which Crouch gave him. Crouch gave her. The correct like the reason with which she is supporting him is that Tom would do that. So it's like she's not even going by the reason of Crouch. So that.
Okay. Lovely, interesting, really interesting.
Also, guys, yeah.
So I also had like something to defend, like Mrs. Adler. So there are like it has been described in the chapter where it said that she did not like she also had a hard time surviving like as a woman like from most other women. So there is a probability that maybe like because she has had a hard time, she might be believing in like supporting others in a hard time.
Great. I love all these. I love this. We need to learn how to discuss openly. Lovely. Everyone has a valid point of view. Great. So examine this. He is on land where he doesn't have any business to be, right? He's on private land. Okay. Probably with a motive to hunt some animal so that he can take it for food. Okay, that's why he has a gun. All right, but now the first illegality is that should he have any business to be on that land at all? Okay, so that's something we need to examine. Before we go into the next thing, that's why he runs, right? Because he has no business to be there in the first place. If they catch him, then he will have some kind of penalty. So in his fear to run away, when he feels he's going to be overpowered because he sees 4 men, he shoots out of fear. And then perhaps accidentally or with intent, we don't know, gravely injures or kills a person, and then he runs away, right? So we have so many things to examine. The fact that should he have been on that land in the first place? So there's a whole separate side of it also, that if a poor man steals a loaf of bread from a shop and runs away because he's hungry and has no other food, now, is it a crime? What do you think? If you could help that guy, would you? Or would you turn him over to the cops? So see, a lot of moral and ethical issues here, which is, I must compliment Rakshita for putting this question out, because it all makes us think. So there's no right and wrong answer, and I'm not going to trust Navneet for the answer. And I would encourage you also to allow your mentees to think for themselves and encourage them to think about all the issues, you know, and start thinking about right and wrong for themselves. What's right, what's wrong? So what do you think? All right. Is it okay for us to sit and judge Peter Crouch, not knowing his circumstances? Or is illegal? As somebody very correctly put it, do we want to live in a society where anybody and everybody is allowed to do what they want? Or is the law equal to all, regardless? Rich and poor, is it equal for all people? A lot of issues to think about, and a lot of issues also for us to think about in our own minds. Anyone else wants to contribute anything?
Ma'am, Ankita has put up a comment in the chat box. She says that we can also say that Mrs. Addis supported him because she might have feared that he would have shot Mrs. Addis if she doesn't support him, as she knows that he had a gun.
Okay, maybe, why not? Why not?
Ma'am, may I add a point as well?
Yeah, of course.
I think that because he was like, you know, he was repenting the fact that he shot someone. He was like, it was a mistake. So maybe that is why she wanted to help him, because even if he was not innocent, he didn't mean to do it. Like, you know, he was not a
yeah, fair enough. He was in a place he wasn't supposed to be, let's remember. And when he saw 4 people suddenly, he panicked, right? Clearly. And then tried to make a run for it, which he knew he couldn't. And therefore, as you say, turned around and shot in the dark. Okay, in the dark. So again, he doesn't know who he shot. He doesn't know where he shot. He doesn't know the result of the shot. Thinks he's hurt somebody very badly or killed them. So lots to think about. And again, Mrs. Addis's position also, like if your best friend turned up at your doorstep in the middle of the night and pleaded for help, has done something wrong, are you going to take the friend in, or are you going to throw her out on the street and say, sorry, I'm not getting involved? So lots to think about, guys. I think it's a very interesting question, and it's a very interesting dilemma problem, which the author puts us into. So we will continue with the rest of the story next time. Try not to read it so that you don't get bored next time. Yes, Rakshita.
And there's one last question left.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah. We are doing the last part as converting indirect speech in, converting the following into direct speech into indirect speech. Our grammar motto is being pulled forward. There are 2 questions left actually. This has 2 parts, so we'll quickly do the direct, indirect, and then we'll do the 6th question. The first part is, I didn't knock, ma'am. I didn't want anyone to hear. Stephanie has also put in the questions in the chat box, which is really cool. You can read it from there also. Would anybody like to try? I didn't knock, ma'am. I didn't want to.
May I try?
Yes, please, sir.
He said that he had not knocked. Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I forgot the question.
I didn't knock, ma'am. I didn't want anyone to hear.
Okay, he said that he had not knocked and he had not wanted anyone to hear.
Yeah, as he had not wanted anyone to hear. Yeah, perfect. As he had not.
Ma'am, I have one more question with this similar question. Can't we say like this? He neither had knocked her nor wanted anyone to hear. Wouldn't that be right?
No, it is not, he didn't do this or this. He didn't knock because of a reason. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes, 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 I got it.
I didn't, if I say I don't want tea or coffee, you'll say she did not, she wanted neither tea nor coffee.
Correct, correct,
You know what?
correct.
It's a or situation. Lovely. Next one.
You might do it for Tom's sake.
Come on, guys.
Would anyone like to try it? You might do it for Tom's sake.
You might have done it for Tom's sake.
He said that, not you, Papa. Now it's indirect. There's no me and you. He said that
he said that she might have done it for Tom's sake.
Right? Becomes past.
So, one crucial thing about these direct speeches, okay, I think, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, yes.
So, I have not mentioned who's saying what because you will see a lot of times, I keep saying this, but a lot of times when the question paper comes, no, they give a passage, and then because that indirect direct has been picked from the passage, they don't tell you who's saying what. So if you read the passage carefully, it will directly come to you. Hence, I've not mentioned who's saying what. Most cases, you might get that also. The sixth question is, why is Peter trying to be as quiet as possible? This is an easy one.
Sorry, what is the correct answer? Sorry, Rachita.
What you said.
You said the correct answer, Satyam.
Thank you.
The sixth question is, why is Peter trying to be as quiet as possible?
So that the keepers don't catch him.
Yeah, but make it a little more. Now, guys, I have to give you at least 2 or 3 marks or so we'll bolo na.
Maybe he's scared or hiding something.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be heard. He's run away from something. He doesn't want to be heard. He doesn't want to be caught. A little more, yeah. If the examiner has to give at least 2 marks, you have to write more than 3 words, right? Okay. I mean, in these easy questions, encourage your mentees to write more because these are just like take-walk questions, right? This is where they're just going to rake the marks in. Encourage them. That's another problem, I'm sorry, which I've noticed with municipal school kids. They will just write those 2-3 words and say, you know, Jan put that type of thing. That's why they're not going to get full marks in any answer. All right? It's not the SSC board anymore. So encourage them to write at least a few complete sentences if they want the whole marks that the question carries. 2 marks or 3 marks is going to warrant a little more effort, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is it. Yeah.
Okay. So perfect timing.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Please.
It's not just related to this chapter, so it's mainly related to poems where they have personal response questions, and it's asked that they need to write whether they agree or disagree and have their own reason for that. So my mentee had this doubt that what if, Didi, we have both perspectives to write? So can they write about both perspectives or they should choose one and write only that?
Well, frankly, you know, they even when you give SAT exams in the essay writing component and all competitive exams, the professional fancy teachers say that write both perspectives. Okay. And therefore then give reasons for both perspectives. The most important part is you can't say, I agree or I don't agree. Okay, but why? Okay, the marks are going to be in the why. All right. So she can say it both ways. That I feel that supposing we're just taking this as an example, okay, that I feel that what he did was wrong and that he had no business to be there and that he had no business to shoot anybody, obviously in better English, I'm just speaking quickly. And therefore, Mrs. Addis shouldn't have protected him. But on the other hand, he was the best friend of Mrs. Addis's son. She has known him since childhood. Perhaps she felt bad for him because he knew that he was not living under the best of circumstances. He did not have much money, which we can see from. So she felt sorry for him and felt that, you know, his life would be ruined, and therefore she gave him sanctuary. So you can hedge your bets and get your marks.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's okay for them to write two different perspectives as long as they explain it.
Explain it. Explain it. You've hedged your bets. Whatever the examiner thinks, you are bingo. Go for it. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Thank you all very much. Rashna and I are so happy to see all of you here. Elated, in fact, to see all of you here. This, just to let you know, graduation yesterday, but this is our third class for the day. Thankfully, the final class for the day, but this is our third class for the day. So well done. And just so you know what you are involved in, the project you're involved in, we started with Ryle Padamsee's Create Foundation's first class today. Then we had our Alumni All-Stars class today, which normally happens on Fridays, but we postponed it till today because we were practicing on Friday. And then your mentor session. On Tuesdays, we don't have classes, but on Wednesdays, we have the GK class. On Thursdays, you do your session with your mentees. On Fridays, we have Fun Friday and Alumni All-Stars. Starting this week on Thursday, we'll have 2 batches of Ryle Padamsee's Create Foundation class. One from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. and one from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So it's like becoming like a Pehchan school with all these classes and a proper timetable and different teachers. And it's really, this organization is seriously coming together. Yeah. Thank you all very much for being part of this. Have the best night. Thank you, Rashna. Thank you, Rakshit.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Love you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.